Good day to our Capstone Research Advisor, Mr. Henry Peralta. We are the Group 1 who will be presenting our capstone research entitled Utilizing Asian Green Mussel Shells Pernaviridis as an additive in producing recycled paper. So now, we will start.
Paper is important to everyone, from our daily lives as a student to adults that work in a company or by just writing our necessities. Currently, here in the Philippines, the production of paper reached to 1.3 million tons per year, according to Paper 2018. On the other side, seeing this amount of paper causes a lot of waste, making the waste paper a second on one of the most abundant solid waste here in the Philippines. Permaviridis, also known as Asian green mussel, seen as shell that has a blue-green color and has smooth surface. As stated in the Global Invasive Species Database in 2005, it is economically important, for it is used as food source. But since shell processing methods are not known in Thailand and here in the Philippines, the shells became food waste. According to Nada et al. 2005, shells contain chitosan, which can be harvested through the acetylation process. Chitosan can be used as cross-linking agent to increase paper strength.
Good day. My name is Maria Leticia Bagnas. I am your discussant for the rationale of the study. Since ancient times, paper has been the most effective means of transmitting communications, and it had a significant influence on human society. Experimentation of different components is applied to see if a paper's strength, absorbency, opacity, printability, and durability have improved. Because eggshells contain important calcium carbonate, research has shown that utilizing them as an alternative source for creating paper is successful. The notion of employing the Asian green mussel shell, Pernaviridis, comes up. It can also benefit the community by reducing the amount of discarded shells and turning them into something that is valuable.
Good day, everyone. I am Michael Christian M. Kadeng, and I will be the discussant on the research questions of this study. Number 1, determine the effectiveness of Asian green mussel shells Pernaviridis as an additive to produce recycled paper. Our goal as researchers is to generate recycled paper by combining crushed Asian green mussel shells or tahong shells alongside with the collected paper pulps from the used papers without sacrificing the product quality. Number 2, evaluate if the recycled paper produced from green mussel shells and unused papers as a substitute component could reach the GSM standards. For this, the product produced from the experimentation will undergo GSM testing. The sample paper will be weighted in kilograms, measured its length in meters, and get the real width in centimeters. It will also undergo a water absorbency test. And for the last question, which among the two group samples has a significant difference in terms of GSM? It will be answered after conducting the GSM and the absorbency test, which among the two samples achieve the standard GSM of the paper.
Good day. I'm Mark Joseph J. Aquino, who will be the presenter of our research hypothesis. So for our research hypothesis, we have the null, alternative, and our third hypothesis. So first, the null hypothesis. So in our null hypothesis, it states that the recycled paper produced by Asian green mussel shell and used paper could not significantly meet the GSM paper standards. We predicted that the outcome of our research which is the paper, will not meet the GSM paper standards. For our alternative hypothesis, we state that the recycled paper produced by Asian green mussel shell and paper pulp could significantly meet the GSM paper standard. Here, we opposed our first hypothesis, which is the null, and state that the outcome of our research would or could significantly meet the GSM paper standard. So for our third hypothesis, we would like to compare the two groups that we tested to know if there is any significant relationship between them. So it states that the recycled paper produced by Asian green mussel shell and paper pulp from the first group and second group has no significant difference in terms of their GSM testing result. So that is it for our research hypothesis.
Good day. My name is Marleticia Bagnas. I'll be the discussant for the assumption. This research is thought to be beneficial in terms of GSM testing, allowing the paper containing Asian green mussel shells to meet the GSM criteria or standard. Believed to be effective because of the similarities of the components to the recycled eggshell paper, which is a successful research. The shells of the Asian green mussel comes in variety of sizes. It's likely that this also has an impact on paper measurement and strength.
And for the scope and limitations. This study is subjected to the efficacy of the pulverized Asian green mussel shells in the paper pulp as recycled paper. We researchers can determine whether it is feasible or durable by conducting GSM testing and absorbency tests. We researchers use recyclable materials from household waste, such as Asian green mussel shells or tahong shells. However, because of the pandemic, we are unable to conduct the experimentation together and limited in time on testing this product.
This study will use the experimental research design. In line with this, the researchers are required to do quantitative approach for us to know if the null hypothesis is true or not. The variables of the study are Asian green mussels and the unused papers. The independent variable is the shells, while the dependent is the paper.
Good day. I will be the presenter for our locale of the study. So for our locale of the study, the experiment is conducted at one of the researchers' house. And we will follow and apply necessary actions so that the two group will be maintained secured to avoid any change in the result or outcome of our study. We will also clean the area and the materials that we will use during the experiment so that it will all go smoothly. That's all for our locale of the study.
Good day. My name is Marleticia Bagnas. I am the discussant for this sampling. In this investigation, the researchers utilized basic random sampling, wherein each shells of the population has an equal chance of being selected. In total, at least 70 samples were used in the study. The first group consists of 30 samples, each containing 30 grams of powdered Asian green mussel shells and 60 grams of paper pulp. The second group consists of 30 samples, each containing 20 grams of powdered Asian green mussel shells and 60 grams of paper pulp.
Good day. I will be the presenter for our data collection. For our data collection, we mentioned 3 ways on how we will collect our data. First is the preparation of materials. Specifically, Asian green mussel shells or pernaviridis, and paper pulp. Here, the materials, which is the Asian green mussel shells and paper pulp, were prepared by the researchers and will undergo the experimentation process and will be turned into the outcome, which is the recycled paper. The second data collection is called GSM testing. The researchers will now measure the height, weight, and width of the paper to know if the paper or the outcome will meet the GSM paper standards. For the third data collection, it is called absorbency. For the absorbency, the researchers will use a method named as Clem's method to measure the strength of the paper in terms of absorbing water. That's all for our data collection.
The materials and instruments for this study are as follows. The shells itself as one of the main variables, use paper as also one of the main variables, blender for making the paper pulp mixture, mortar and pestle for pulverizing the shells, container to create paper, and silkscreen also to create paper. And the measurement instruments are the following. Caliper to measure the height and width of paper in centimeters, and lastly, weighing scale to measure the amount of paper pulp in the shell mixture in grams.
As for the research validity and its reliability, our research is valid because we have aligned our methods on a published study that has been used and evaluated by other professionals. We also kept the procedures consistent as possible to limit the influence of external factors on our results.
Good day. I will be the first presenter for our data analysis. For our data analysis, the researchers are advised to use an independent t-test because the group is using a two-group design. The produced paper from the first and second group will undergo GSM testing to see if any of these produced paper will meet the GSM paper standard. After knowing the result, we will now proceed at using independent t-test to obtain the data that presents if these two groups has any difference. That's all for the first part of the data analysis.
To resolve a substantial difference in the GSM value between the two groups, the researchers will apply the independent t-test, identifying which group meets the GSM standard. Wherein X subscript 1, mean of the first group, X subscript 2, mean of the second group, S1 plus S2, standard error of the difference of the combined standard error of two groups, N subscript 1, sample size of first group, N subscript 2, sample size of the second group.
The researchers will observe these ethics throughout the conducting of experimentations and data collection processes. First is honesty and integrity. Since the researchers will use experimental type of approach, the researchers will take a photo of the collected data to prove that the data is accurate and specific. Next is responsibility. The researchers will avoid mistakes when conducting the study. If inappropriate behavior was noticed, the researchers will be then held accountable for their mistakes.
One in the group has an allergic reaction to the pulverized mussel shells. And we also ensure that we use grinding machine properly. Also, our experimentation doesn't include live organisms and only used the shells of Asian green mussels. Importantly, we disposed properly and segregated properly the remaining materials such as the pulverized green mussel shells and the extracted paper pulps. Lastly, talking about intellectual property, We researchers will never discredit the owner of the material or the idea used in this study, especially in writing in the manuscript. And we will be always be acknowledge the author or give the credit to the owner of that particular idea. That's all. Thank you.
For the timeline from phase 1 to phase 5, the timeline are as follows. For phase 1 to 2, the background of the study were created by the researchers. Aquino and Bagnas were assigned for rationale, research questions were assigned by Mr. Kedeng and Ms. David, research hypotheses were created by Mr. Kedeng and verified by Mr. Aquino, and meet-up for materials happened wherein Ms. David gave Ms. Bagnas the dried shells for the initial product. For phase 3, assumptions were assigned to Mr. Aquino and Ms. Bagnas, and scope of limitations were assigned to Mr. Kedeng and Ms. David. For phase 4, research design and local of the study were formulated by Mr. Aquino and Mr. Kedeng. Sampling were created by Ms. Bagnas, and Ms. David were assigned to formulate the data gathering. And lastly, for phase 5, research instrument were formulated by Mr. Aquino, Ms. David, and Ms. Bagnas, and edited by Mr. Kedeng. Data analysis were formulated by Mr. Aquino and Ms. Bagnas, and lastly, ethical issues were formulated by Mr. Aquino and Ms. David.